The blind sheikh and his contacts in Afghanistan are quick to find a replacement for Ahmad Salem. He arrives a few days later at JFK Airport in New York on a flight coming from Pakistan.
A Pakistani Airlines flight from Karachi lands here at Kennedy Airport. Seated in the first-class cabin, Ramzi Yousef. He's traveling with a Palestinian terrorist named Ahmad Ajaj. The two men exit the plane and approach parallel stalls at an immigration post. The 6-foot-tall Yousef, dressed in a 3-piece silk Afghan suit, presents a perfectly forged Iraqi passport. He demands political asylum. When immigration officials question Ajaj, they discover that he's carrying several crudely fake passports and a suitcase stuffed with bomb-making manuals. Immigration agents take Ajaj into custody. They assign him a bed at this INS detention facility, but Yousef is allowed into the U.S. and told to appear at an immigration hearing.
Though the narrative of most mainstream documentaries asserts that Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman was in need of more conspirators with expertise, exclusive from the Afghan region, and that essentially this time in early September of 1992 is when Ramzi Yousef first arrives in the United States, the circumstances with his traveling companion, the Palestinian Ahmed Ajaj, is overlooked and does not necessarily fit the establishment narrative based around Salem's absence, as Ahmed Ajaj had already been residing in Houston, Texas since late 1991, having been granted political asylum, living with some of his relatives there, working as a Domino's pizza delivery driver. On April 24, 1992, months already before Salem left El Gabroni and Nosair's circles, Ajaj left to Peshawar, Pakistan, abandoning his first asylum claim while using a different alias, and from there to Camp Kaldon on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. Lacking the necessary credentials, Ajaj was sent to Saudi Arabia to obtain a letter of recommendation. A month later, Ajaj then flew to Saudi Arabia via the United Arab Emirates, where he procured a letter of introduction requesting the leader of Camp Kaldon to train Ajaj in the use of weapons and explosives, to where Ajaj then returned to Pakistan and Afghanistan via United Arab Emirates, arriving June 1992, and began a bomb-building course at Camp Kaldon. Only then, by August 31, 1992, using services of a Pakistani travel agent, Ajaj and Ramzi Yousef boarded a flight in Peshawar and flew to Karachi and then on to JFK in New York. The INS handed Ajaj to Wackenhut Correctional Corporation for incarceration in a converted warehouse in Queens. Later he pleaded guilty to the use of an altered passport and was sentenced to 6 months. But as previously mentioned, Ramzi Yousef does get into the country and eventually connects with Mohammed Salameh, for where they'll become roommates throughout New Jersey, essentially networking with Mahmoud Abu Halima, Nadel Ayad, and others throughout the coming months. Yousef's real name is Abdul Basit Mahmoud Abdul Karim. Ramzi Yousef is the main alias he uses, but it's known that he's used well over a dozen. Various sources state that he was either born in Iraq, Kuwait, or the United Arab Emirates, even though it's more widely believed that he was born in Kuwait. He comes from Pakistani and Palestinian parents. When his family moved to Pakistan in the mid-1980s, Yousef was sent to the UK for education in 1986, where he enrolled in Swansea Institute in Wales and studied electrical engineering, graduating 4 years later. He also studied at Oxford College of Further Education to improve his English. But separate from the backgrounds of these two proposed bomb makers, it's also important to look back in retrospect as to what was happening in this time frame in 1992, such as what happens on November 3rd, as Democratic Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton defeats Republican President George H.W. Bush and Independent Ross Perot in the 1992 presidential election. But globally speaking, as the Western world is still adapting to the fall of the Wall and Soviet Union, on December 3rd, the UN Security Council Resolution 794 is unanimously passed, approving a coalition of the United States peacekeepers led by the U.S. to form UNITAF, tasked with ensuring humanitarian aid gets distributed and establishing peace in Somalia. The following day, December 4th, U.S. military forces land in Somalia. December 21st, President of Serbia, Slobodan Milosevic, defeats Milan Panic in the Serbian presidential election. And on December 24th, soon to be exiting President George H.W. Bush pardoned 6 national security officials implicated in the Iran-Contra affair, including Caspar Weinberger. On New Year's Day, January 1st, 1993, Czechoslovakia ceases to exist as the Czech Republic and Slovakia separate into the so-called Velvet Divorce. 2 days later, on January 3rd, 1993, Presidents George H.W. Bush and Boris Yeltsin signed the Second Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty in Moscow. And on the day before inauguration, January 19, 1993, Iraq refuses to allow UNSCOM inspectors to use its own aircraft to fly into Iraq, becoming the early stages of the Iraq disarmament crisis. Essentially, Bush Sr. handing Clinton over residual escalations of Desert Storm. The U.S. military began operations in the demilitarized zone between Iraq and Kuwait, and the northern Iraqi no-fly zones. The U.S. fired 40 Tomahawk cruise missiles at Baghdad factories linked to Iraq's alleged illegal nuclear weapons program, with Iraq then subsequently informing UNSCOM that it will be able to resume its flights. Then the following day, January 20th, 1993, Bill Clinton is sworn in as the 42nd President of the United States.
Throughout the fall and winter, Yousef and 3 other members of the Al Farouk Mosque are hard at work inside this storage facility in Jersey City, New Jersey, just across the Hudson River from Manhattan. Under Yousef's direction, they assemble the device they hope will topple the Twin Towers and kill thousands of people.
One mischaracterization from mainstream documentaries about the upcoming Trade Center plot is that it was central to the Al Farouk Mosque in Brooklyn, New York, tied in with the recruitment for the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, when in actuality, it was the Masjid al-Salam in New Jersey where the blind sheikh frequently held sermons at and bombing conspirators attended. But continuing with the story leading up to constructing the bomb, on January 24th, Ramzi Yousef and Mohammed Salameh, while driving a car, get into a wreck. The reason for the incident is alleged to have been due to Salameh's clumsy driving, which resulted in Ramzi Yousef being severely injured, requiring hospitalization. But throughout the course of Ramzi Yousef's endeavors during this time period, it has never been stated that he had met with El Sayed Nosair while in prison, who seemed to be at the center of it all as far as organizing actions, although it is probable that they had at least met once by this point. But similarly, Yousef was still able to construct the Trade Center bomb with assistance yet still from Ajaj, while also incarcerated. Ajaj remained in contact with Yousef and other co-conspirators, and continued to be involved with the World Trade Center bombing plot. Ajaj never contacted Yousef directly. Calls were patched through an associate in Dallas, rendering law enforcement detection more difficult. In a connected conversation, Ajaj brought up the bomb-making manuals that were confiscated after his arrest at JFK Airport, informing Yousef that the court had ordered the government to return Ajaj's belongings while incarcerated, therefore enabling Ajaj to give Yousef bomb-making directives and tips.